So let's jump to our last panel. Up on the screen behind me, Alex Domenick is an electronic trader at RBC Capital Markets. He's been there for 12 years, serving in a variety of muni roles from underwriting to trading. The rest of the panel on my left, Matthew Smith is the founder of Spline Data, which builds custom machine learning models to deliver real-time muni yield curves and bond prices. He was previously head of trading at Headlands Tech Global Markets. Josh Rosenblum joined Brownstone in 2010 and serves as its head of algorithmic trading, overseeing the firm's electronic liquidity and data-driven initiatives. His team manages Brownstone's proprietary muni portfolio and provides trading services to buy-side clients. Chris Comey is a senior sales relationship manager on the Marketaxess muni sales team, working with mutual funds, asset managers, hedge funds, and private banks. Chris has worked at Marketaxess since May of 2016 and has over 25 years of experience in the industry. So again, as we're going along, feel free to enter in your questions. It's been helpful, and I think really interesting stuff has come in. But we'll kick it off first with sort of a big picture piece. What roadblocks do dealers encounter as they evolve systematic strategies? And why don't we start with Josh?
Sure. Not even speaking about data, normalization, connectivity, we can get into all that, but I think one of the biggest roadblocks is historic legacy protocols in the muni market. If you think about equities, it's a real-time product. There's tick-level data, nanoseconds, people finding ways to improve to the 10th decimal timing of response time on an order. In munis, the entire industry is based around a nightly eval service with a sometimes updated curve that updates somewhere between 10 and 12, depending on the brunch schedule. And you've got an hourly curve competing against it, and bid-wanted process, which is how 95% of client sales take place, with hours and hours between firm times. So from an automation perspective, automating a response time to something that may not be due for 2 hours isn't really the big win. It's automating a large body of responses. So being able to respond to 10,000 bid-wanteds at once, not responding to 10 of them slightly faster than you were before. That's a huge roadblock. And
But just before we go on, did you see any change there, or is that going to evolve, get up faster, or what's the?
Yeah, we've seen some times cut down. I think the more and more dealers, and there are now a handful of more algo-driven dealers responding programmatically to bid-wanteds and offering their bonds programmatically. I think we'll see a slow drift towards more of a streaming infrastructure, where right now offerings are a streaming protocol, but pricing updates on an interval or once, twice a day, 3 times at most dealers. And we are trying to balance respecting an existing framework where people, rightfully so, expect a price to be firm for some reasonable period of time, but also from our risk standpoint and from servicing a client with the most current data, updating our pricing as real time as possible. So that's been something we're really focused on. And we're also focused on and have been experimenting with some select clients, streaming bid sides unsolicited, not necessarily waiting for a bid wanted to come in and provide a bid. So we think the protocols will adjust.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to the data side and a little bit of the connectivity side. I think that's probably the 2 buckets of roadblocks, at least in building an automated strategy in the muni space. First, on the data side, I won't speak to any kind of direct competitor, but I mean, Josh said it, the frequency of data is super low. And so if you're a new entrant into the space and you just pick up every other data source that other dealers are using, you're, multiple years behind a curve of building infrastructure out on top of that existing data. But 2, the fact that you have to build so much infrastructure to make that data support an automated trading strategy is the impetus for why I wanted to start my business. And if you look at other asset classes, like the quality and the frequency of the data feeds that you get, you can almost kind of plug and play into trading an asset class. You might not have a very good strategy, but you can start trading in a short amount of time. Whereas munis, that hasn't really existed, I think, until Spline data hit the scene. Obviously, I've got to shell out for myself a little bit, but that's really held back, I think, a lot of people from entering the muni market. And then on the connectivity side, it's like, say, you have the most genius MIT PhD in rocket science or whatever, come in and whip up some code for you in 3 hours, and you've got a working strategy with good prices. Where are you going to send them? You've got to build a connection to all of the existing platforms. You have to set up an EMS and an OMS. And then if you want to trade directly with customers, where a lot of the better execution happens, it's a multi-month-long affair just to get all of that infrastructure in place. And I think there could be a more easy kind of centralized solution for that.
Chris, I want to bring you in here.
Yeah, I mean, at Marketaxess, I have a different view. I face clients. So if instead of calling it automation, what if we called it exception-based trading? I mean, it's the same thing, but everyone hears automation and they're worried about losing their job. So if you have a 200 item bid wanted list and you have a limit level that you can bring in from your order management system and you get 7 bids, I mean, why not automate selling those items instead of having to click 200 items at a time?
Alex, I can see you on the screen where I look over here. I'm looking at this. Can you give us your perspective?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you,
yeah. From my perspective, as a dealer with a larger platform, integrating our electronic capabilities and algo into our broader platform is somewhat of a challenge. There's a lot of customers who would like to do trading on more of an institutional block size, venue with voice trading and salespeople that are used to that. So kind of mixing in the electronic venues with voice trading while also being able to provide the analytics to our sales and traders in a way that they can view it, which is different than a lot of and I've spoken to Josh about this a lot. With a pure algo, you don't necessarily have to provide that information to your traders in a way that they all want to see it, but that's kind of a challenge that we face sitting in kind of in between the new world and the old world, so to speak.
So there is some technology off the shelf to do automated trading strategies. Question about what are you using? Have you built it? What's available? Kind of talk a little, maybe start with you, Josh, but talk about what you've got and what is available and how you evaluate it.
Sure. I think the build versus buy argument is always relevant in plumbing. So the connectivity, normalizing different venues, protocols. I think where we felt it was really important to focus building is in pricing. And I think there are a number of misconceptions about pricing and what an algo is even generating in pricing. Price is not necessarily a fixed point price. There's no correct price. You have eval services that mark people's portfolios every night. That's one price. You have MSRB trades, which are ultimately the de facto price. That's where someone decided to execute a trade. And when people start to develop their strategies, whether it's sell side, buy side, trading strategy, riskless, doesn't matter. You have to try to train yourself to stop thinking of price as a single price and start to think of it as a distribution of likelihoods of trades at different prices. So looking at a bid wanted, for example, there are a number of bids across that bid wanted. There's context surrounding it. It's what's the market doing today? What else is out there? What's risk look like? What are flows? What's seasonality right now? And bidding a spread today versus a spread tomorrow might be very different. And bidding a dollar price of 175, I'm going to give you 100% likelihood of winning on pretty much anything you bid. And as you start to detract from that, your likelihood goes down. So from our perspective, it was about generating probability distributions of pricing, not just single prices, so that we, on a trading strategy, can optimize how much do we want to win, how little do we want to win, select which opportunities we want to seize and win. And instead of, say, buying something off the shelf from a vendor, you don't necessarily think of it as, should we buy that or do it ourselves? It's how can we integrate all of these data products as features or signals into our own models to help us come up with those distributions.
You're a builder, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could also argue for buying. Like, I don't think Bloomberg needs any more free press, but like in terms of,
come on. He's not. He's, you know.
EMSs, in terms of EMSs, it's like for the dealer side, Tom's is like kind of the dominant platform there. And like, if you're going to choose somewhere to spend your time and you can just like plug into a system and have some connectivity there and have some way to manage your risk, then that gives you more time to build on your end. I think it's never an either or for build or buy, even in the same task. Like if you're trying to come up with, probability distribution, you have to start somewhere, right? Like what's the midpoint of your distribution? And if you have kind of not a lot of internal modeling built out, like an eval price might be actually a great point to start there. And maybe you could even look at something like the differences between eval prices, right? Like if there's large disparities in the evals, then that could maybe suggest to you like that the probability of where that is going to trade is a little more unsure. So it's kind of additive in that aspect. And I think you said it right. Like pricing is not the one component that will get somebody to an automated strategy. Like there's bid ask, there's risk management, there's what rule sets do you want? Maybe you don't want to trade Hudson Yards, or maybe you don't want to trade certain liquidity levels. How do you determine that level of liquidity? Do you come up with internal scores? How do you do that? So I think there's a lot to be built, but where you can buy, you probably should.
Chris, do you want to?
I mean, you see it, every day now in a fee compression environment. The dealers are getting squeezed, buy side's getting squeezed. So, a lot of clients have come to us and have asked us to build out different protocols for them. And right now, we're the only ones that are offering AutoX for clients. We have other various protocols, and that is definitely added to the liquidity, the velocity trading. So, we're definitely on the build side.
Alex, so we love your thoughts on just the technology, automated technology, and which, building or buying, what's out there.
Yeah, I think Matt kind of touched on this, but Bloomberg is a great resource for pretty much every data point you could possibly imagine. I think, to Josh's point as well, you do need a benchmark, something to kind of benchmark where you're trading off of. So that, I guess you could think of that as the midpoint. And a lot of evals kind of serve this purpose, but like him, our algo takes a lot of information into account to try and determine how far away from that midpoint do we need to be in order to buy bonds and sell them efficiently without making a market that loses money. I think to that extent, having a bid and an ask, not to market Matt's product here, but I've looked at that and it's pretty great. We use data points from all the evals. I think a lot of the ECNs provide good data. So yeah.
So a couple of questions coming in, interesting. So here's one, how does the sell side approach the competition coming from more traditional buy side firms in providing liquidity?
I mean, it's inevitable, right? Like if they decide that that's part of their prerogative and they can do that better than you, then you need to compete. Like you need to be better at pricing. You need to be pricing inside of these. And I mean, I think in generally, like the more traditional sell side probably needs to understand that like they can't have every trade that they want. Like this market has gotten, even since 2018, so much more liquid. Just with I would say mostly algo dealers, but the times have changed, and like if that's the buy side's prerogative and they're good at it, then you let the best man win. Especially when it comes to being able to price where things trade. I mean, it takes a significant amount of data, and I think dealers actually have kind of an advantage there because they see a lot of other customers flow. So they should be able to compete.
Yeah, I mean, we have no problem with it. It's a classification of someone is either A or B. What's the difference? Ultimately, it's a liquidity provider. We've seen it as an opportunity to kind of bring the last question back to this one in the build versus buy. There are a number of tier one, large, big clients that would love to provide liquidity, but are now at this stage where they either don't have the connectivity, don't have the processes in place, don't have the data, or frankly, just don't think it's worth it from a build perspective. So at least the way, speaking for us, the way we've approached this situation is it's very prevalent in equities, but we've started to build out a fixed income outsourced trading business. And frankly, the way we define that is we have pricing, we have connectivity, we have workflows, APIs. If you'd like to be able to respond to bid wanteds yourself, but you don't have the technology as a buy-side firm, if you need access to pricing that we can prove is accurate, if you'd like to consume not just our offers, but aggregated offers and search around and find liquidity that fits your needs, whether it's to buy or sell, we've partnered with some great clients, and we view it as partnerships. It's not a competitor if you're working together and we can provide something we've already built, save someone a serious headache in the beginning to get that off the ground, and they can start deploying that to their clients. You mentioned earlier credit scoring. Some buy-side firms are excellent at credit, excellent at deciding what to buy and sell. Trading is a different animal, vice versa. Maybe we're excellent at trading and creating workflows and leave the credit scoring and broader investment decisions to the clients. So there's definitely ways to partner. It's not necessarily just a competitive landscape.
Yeah.
I mean, at Marketaxess, we're definitely seeing an increase in buy-side activity, but it's nowhere near where it is in other products. I still think there's definitely some hesitancy on the buy side to be price makers. I mean, especially how wide the muni market is and all the different participants. I mean, not all of the clients have the data that you talk about and the systems in place to be a price maker.
So I'm going to ask this to Alex.
I think that
Yeah.
providing liquidity and servicing your client base and investing and portfolio management are two totally separate functionalities. A lot of our clients probably spend their entire day doing their current job. So to the extent that customers will start providing liquidity, I think some do in some respects. But if our primary role is to provide liquidity, we're spending all of our time thinking about how can we build an inventory for our customers so that we have the bonds that our customers need when they need them at good levels. We're providing a service that provides a fair amount of value because if the customer base had to go and provide liquidity and service their client base, they might be spread a little thin.
I'm going to go to the next question. So I'll say, Matthew can answer this after last.
Okay.
Because it seems like an obvious, but how can offerings bid wanted data or any other data beyond actual trades be used in pricing or curve generation? I assume you have a point of view on that, but
I do, yeah. Multiple, rather.
Yeah, so why don't we maybe start with Chris on this?
I'll leave it up to these guys.
Okay.
That's not my.
We're going to say the same thing, so why
Oh,
don't
you are?
why don't you
Okay.
take it?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It might be shocking to some, but I just don't think having that unique data is actually that critical to pricing because currently pricing is missing so much nuance within the market. Something may not have traded for 2 months, and the last price is basically where it traded 2 months ago. So there's a lot of gaps to fill in terms of like inference from looking at how similar bonds trade, just being able to determine what is a similar bond, looking at the like interrelatedness of size. I think that's a huge component that's missing in pricing in the market. Like, 95% of the trades in the muni market are odd lots. 5% are used for pricing, right? The round lots. So there's this huge swath of data that's not being used in pricing, and to say having bid wanted information or like customer specific flow is critical, I think it's currently incorrect given the state of pricing. That's not to say as pricing matures and becomes better and more real time and closer to the truth, that data is going to be valuable, but for the time being, it's nice to have.
I think it's important to have contextual curves. I'll define that, but meaning that historically a lot of muni data off the shelf was very binned into here's sub 4% coupon, 4 to 5% coupon, 5+, and state buckets and tax buckets and you name it. Anything could be grouped into a matrix or a bin. And then you have a situation where rates blow out and it's no longer I care on 4% or higher, it's 5% or higher. And I heard someone joke the other day, the curve is a 5% curve and we have a callable curve and a non-call curve. What's the difference if rates are at 5%? So I think it's interesting when you're generating data, generating curves, to try to think of things less binned, interval, step-driven, and start to think of more fluid relationships where is there a relationship between a coupon and where the price should be on this bond? If it's callable, using OAS is hugely important in that. But it's very important to think about it less binned and start to think of fluid relationships.
Chris, I want to jump to you for the next one. Question is, are there market structure characteristics unique to munis that make it more challenging to apply technical best practices compared to equities?
Oh boy. The market. The velocity of trading in equities. Munis are so far behind. We're seeing it like. I started in equities in 1995, and back then I was trading on screens. And then where Marketaxess started 20 years ago, into where we are now, munis are 15 years behind where high grade is. So it's just going to take time, I think.
Do you think that's going to compress at all,
Absolutely,
given technology?
absolutely.
That lag
Absolutely,
is going to compress.
With more dealers, the dealer algos, clients are building algos. It's going to be, trading screen to screen. You're going to see the velocity of trading pick up, just as you've seen in other high grade, high yielding products.
Alex, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that non-trade data is actually, a very large portion of our overall algorithm. Even if a market doesn't trade, it's still a market, and it's something we can use to determine how wide our bid and ask should be, because really that's just basically showing what the risk profile of the market is. If we see there's more bidders than usual on bid wanteds that we didn't win, that's telling us that maybe we don't have that client inquiry, but someone else does. So maybe we want to be a little more aggressive, or it really tells you how thin the market is. Even covers is a great data point we like to use. So I think there's a lot that goes on outside of trade data that really helps kind of make a business like this run.
What are some other examples? What are you thinking about when you say outside the trading data?
Like the number of bid wanteds, what the cover was, any type of other curve movement. We look at changes in evals, stuff like that.
This next question came in. We always hear about cost and fee reduction compression on the sell side. Is there an area where fees or commissions are increasing? I feel like the answer in the world is no, but
I could throw out
Okay.
a non-answer to that. I think fees, compression is obviously happening.
it's like
But
gravity, right?
It's like gravity. But I will say, I think it's compressing not towards zero, but towards a restructuring of how we think about fees. In every other industry, there are service fees, all-you-can-eat type pricing models where you pay
Yeah.
X and you get a use of Y. And if you need a larger subscription, you pay for the next tier.
Yeah.
And you pay for the next tier. And that's how everything else works. I see that
Interesting,
happening
yeah.
more and more in our space, whether not just munis, corporates, any product that's trading electronically, but to achieve scale, you need to be able to do that and have some form of preferential pricing. Now, that being said, what's interesting about that is, and I'm probably not the best person, this would have been better on the first panel, but it's difficult in clients we've spoken to pay subscription-based charges when costs need to be passed down to clients. And if there are a number of, say there are 20,000 SMAs at a firm, and there's a subscription to a data product that costs, what, $10 million a year? What do you?
Something like that.
So say this
If I like you.
So there's a subscription to a data product that is hugely beneficial to their management of their SMA program,
Yeah.
but some of those SMAs transact 300 times a year, some are twice a year. How do you pass along those costs? Can you charge more in a management fee and compete with your competitors? And it's a difficult balance, I think. On the sell side, it's a little easier. On the buy side, I think passing through costs when you're dealing with transactions and clients in separate accounts, it's a challenge.
That's interesting, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, just the question of fees going higher, I mean, that's just adorable. I mean, it's,
You think not? You're saying no?
I mean, we get questions all the time. Everyone wants to restructure, but I agree with Josh. It's going to get more creative, whether it's going to be per transaction or the all-you-can-eat model or different tiers. I mean, we have to get more creative, but it's a grind.
That's like Airbnb, do a cleaning fee. Just
I think the marginal fees are decreasing, but like the total fees that people are taking on are increasing, right? Because
volume or just why?
I would say both volume, right, on the trading side. Fees are compressing, but more trading volume is happening as the market gets more electronic. So kind of the difference is kind of made up in a sense. And then, on the data side, people are just consuming more data. They're able to do more with data now than they were, in 2017 or 2016 when nobody on the desk knew how to code. And I was telling myself I wouldn't say it, but like ChatGPT is just such Sam Altman. If I get any subscriptions, he owes me 10% rev share. Let's just get that on the record. But you can go in there and tell it, what you want to do, and you can say, build me a model for, using linear regression or, PCA or some interesting thing that you don't really know that much about, and test it out very easily. So I think people are just going to be spending more on data because they're finding more ways to utilize it and integrate it into their system.
Also, everybody who has data in the past wasn't charging for it in many cases. Even the exchanges didn't charge the degree which they change now.
Yeah,
and
more or less. I mean, munis, there's always been a thriving data business, I think, just because of how sparse the information is. It's not quite like equities in that sense, but you're right. I think it's probably changing in that direction.
Alex, you have any thoughts on the data side there?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring this up. We've just been having a number of meetings about all the subscriptions we use. Kind of just talking about which ones do we use the most. Kind of trying to figure out the most efficient mix of subscriptions to kind of run our business. And I do think that conversation is happening everywhere. And the market will eventually evolve, and I do think fees will start to compress to the extent that people find other ways to find the data that they need, or more efficient subscription services that provide better data come up. So like anything else, that's a market in and of itself. So it will continue to evolve.
Okay, next question was, this is a good one. Estimate how many dealers are using algorithmic trading, and what would it take to make algorithmic trading more prevalent in the market? Chris, why don't you start there?
I mean, it's there's I'm trying to think of a number in my head, but I mean, there's a lot more now than there was 7 years ago when I started Marketaxess. I mean, basically now almost anything $1 million and under, you're going to see anywhere from 7 to 10 algos bid it. So, and then there's some other alternative liquidity providers, not end clients, but other dealer type
like hedge funds.
traders out there that are that have built algos. And it's obvious, some are better than the others, so.
Any thoughts on that? Or?
That would have been my guess, is like 10 to 15, I don't know, seriously pursuing it. But there's a lot of people recently that are interested in like venturing into that space.
Are there like non-muni, traditional muni people getting in?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
you see that as a big, I mean, that was interesting to happen with the venture capital world, right? All of a sudden, the past 5 years, influx of, non-VC, traditional VC people suddenly funding. Once things become very mathematical, it opens the opportunity. So.
Just seeing some more systematic hedge funds coming into the
Yeah,
space.
that's what I'm thinking,
Getting calls from people they're just starting to work on there in the exempt space. They're there in taxables, but just more and more we're fielding calls from those kind of firms.
Yeah. I don't think that should dissuade anybody from pursuing getting into the space too, because I think this all goes back to that, spread compression. That's why there are people, that are capable of quoting munis in the market, and it's not like, okay, sure, if you're attached to, making a half a point, you probably went out of business a long time ago. But if you're ahead of that spread compression, if you know it's coming, if you're realistic with yourself, and you focus instead on getting ahead and how best can I benefit from the increased volume that comes along with spread compression, the bigger the head start, the better off you are, right? Like if somebody's been in the space for 5 years versus a new systematic hedge fund, they're going to know a lot more about the market, and they're going to be able to take a lot of that intuition and apply it to their strategy, where there's a huge learning curve for the new guys.
Yeah, we've seen the learning curve for the new guys bidding on stuff they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Let's say more about
Some uncomfortable conversations.
like what would, I don't know,
Just
you have to
the-
name
just
names,
bid-
but what's an
just
example?
bidding
or-
on a couple million of a non-rated bond that trades by appointment only, and they no idea to get out of it.
Yeah.
Alex, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily the number of algos, but the more people that get involved. I kind of think of the algo participation in the market as an aggregate market liquidity. So, if a couple of algos decided to increase their inventory size pretty substantially, then spread compression would you would see a very noticeable spread compression. I think Matt mentioned this. It is a little hard for me to hear what everyone's saying, but the spread compression you've seen between kind of block trades and anything really above 100 bonds, it is in my mind pretty much due to the fact that a lot of SMAs can already buy, instead of going out and buying a block of 2 to 5 million Texas PSF bonds, they can buy that same amount as a whole 20 basis points cheaper in 20 bond odd lots at one time, and it doesn't really make a difference to them because they have credit teams that have already reviewed the credits and all of that stuff. So I think that's definitely just going to continue, and to the extent that there's still value, I think someone in the market will find it.
To what degree does electronic trading go beyond traders and execution? Can you elaborate on how electronic tools could augment workflow for sales and underwriting? Sure.
I think one underlying theme that we haven't mentioned at all is that this is very much a relationship business still in munis, and a new it'll look back around to that. But without a relationship, you're just another entrant onto an electronic platform. And unlike equities, there's no NBBO, there's no central order book. It's a relationship business in that you need to be enabled with clients. You need to see as much flow as possible. You need to be given the opportunity to provide liquidity to someone. And that's an important detail. As we see compression in spreads and more entrants, a buy-side firm may not need 30 bids on a bid wanted because they're selling a vast majority of their inventory to a select handful of dealers who are really efficient with big balance sheets. So I think that's a hugely important detail, that it's a relationship distribution business. Where the electronics come into play are just to help enhance the way those relationships communicate. So whereas maybe 7-8 years ago, we would have been communicating with a SMA or retail client, sending back and forth messages on Bloomberg and Excel sheets, and even that at the time, maybe there were some hacky ways of interacting in bulk. Now it's a little bit more like steering the ship, not paddling the kayak. It's how can we forge a big relationship where we can have a large number of transactions super efficiently. And I find that 9 out of 10 of my conversations with buy-side partners of ours these days are about workflow. How can we get this into a format that's lowest impact to you, minimize friction in communication, get you our data as cleanly as possible, and basically meet the client at their workflow. So where they don't have to make a massive investment just to do a trade with us.
I mean, workflows, part of every conversation I have with clients. I mean, everyone is trying to do more with less. I mean, especially with the increase in the SMA business, you have hundreds of thousands of underlying accounts. I mean, the ability to have the straight-through processing, to send your orders into a trading system, execute AutoX, and have the sales go back and auto-allocate. I mean, I've had a client tell me, on a 200-item list where they can AutoX and auto-allocate, we save them like 45 minutes per list. I mean, that gives they'll give up a couple pennies in execution just to have a smarter workflow.
Alex, going to bring you in there on questions on sales and underwriting.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic that we always have with our sales force. I think that having a large sales force actually helps a lot, even when you have an algo, because we can know what our clients' inquiries are. We can be more aggressive in those parts of the curve or in those states. So that will always be there. I think ultimately, as a salesperson, you're an information broker. You're really driving the relationship and getting information about like what are your clients' needs. If you have a client who just wants to lift offerings and do things electronically, we can provide that service. But a lot of clients like the market color. They like having someone they can go to, to help them on new issue. Because we have all these different facets of our business, I think there's a huge value in having a sales force, and the relationship helps price discovery a tremendous amount.
I'm going to give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is pretty straightforward. I stole from you guys as you were talking. It boils down to, I think you're just going to see non-traditional players and what are entering traditional markets. So like people, who have had successful secondary algos up until this point in time, it's like they haven't quite matured, but like their marginal returns are starting to diminish. So they might be looking to get into underwriting competitive deals or or getting involved in like ETF arbitrage in the muni market. And so I think that that's just kind of the next stage of evolution, and it all boils down to pricing, right? Your secondary trading is kind of the brains of your pricing operation, and you can, if you starting from a good point, you can branch off and create successful strategies outside of just bidding and offering RFQs and sending orders in.
Fantastic. Well, it's 4:59. And Matthew didn't think I could end on time, but here we are. We're going to call it.
We didn't mention
30.
AI once.
No, I was going to get to AI, but
ChatGPT.
there was a lot of AI before. A lot of AI before.
Sorry, I ruined it.
So thank you all for coming, and thank you, panel.